Just before we get to the next session, a quick reminder about who Sanctuary graduates are, if you're just joining us, and why we've put this conference on. So Sanctuary graduates are the early careers attraction and recruitment experts. We've built campus networks and university partnerships which allow us to reach any student at all UK universities. We're helping hundreds of businesses reach, attract and hire the best, most diverse graduates, interns and apprentices. Diversity does really run through the core of our business, and more than half of our clients actually come to us to help them with the diversity aspect, and that's one of their main reasons for working with us. Our expertise in this area and our proud partnership with the Social Mobility Foundation allows us to curate this annual conference, which hopefully you're enjoying so far. We do various things to support. We provide funding to support disadvantaged students at our partner universities. We donate money from every diversity client campaign to our partners, the Social Mobility Foundation, and we deliver expert sessions to our university partners. If you want to learn more about how we can help your university, then please do drop me an email. Just a quick reminder here of the different services that we offer employers, from diversity attraction marketing to end-to-end process management for graduates, interns, and apprentices. And for those of you who manage your own recruitment but might need attraction and marketing support, here are the options that we have. So this includes driving diverse applications and ensuring you have diverse students at your events, as well as managing your entire early careers attraction marketing strategy. If you'd like to know more about us and what we can do for you, then please do drop me an email. My details will be on the screen all day. So now we move into our first panel discussion of the day, and this is how to improve social mobility in your organization. Really pleased to be joined today by three organizations that have taken huge strides to improve social mobility within their companies. Goldman Sachs and KPMG both feature in the top 50 of the Social Mobility Employer Index 2022, while Browne Jacobson sits at #1 for the second consecutive year. Please do put any questions that you have in the Q&A box throughout the session. And without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and introduce the panel. Hi, everybody. How are we doing today?
Very good.
Yeah, morning.
Good. Morning. Good morning. And we can't see Tom on the screen just yet. I know that I'm in contact with him on the email, so hopefully he'll be joining in a second. But for now, Janine, did you want to just introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Janine Glazenberg, and I manage all of recruiting at Goldman Sachs. I've been at Goldman for over 15 years, so a very long time. And what's been super interesting, actually, over the last kind of 5 years or so, is really seeing the journey that we've been on from a social mobility perspective, and how we are definitely still learning each and every day on this journey. But delighted to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Amazing. Good to see you again, Janine. And Freya, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience as well?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Freya Walker. I'm one of the senior managers within the student recruitment team at KPMG. I've been there for just under 5 years and have really seen kind of us grow in this space. So it's really exciting to be on this call today to talk to you about, you know, what we're all doing to really kind of encourage kind of a fairer platform for all. So really excited to talk to you all and answer any questions that you have.
Amazing, brilliant. And as I said, we will be joined by Tom Lias or Lias, who knows yet, very shortly from Browne Jacobson. Okay, but for now, let's start off with the first question. And as I said, Q&As will be active throughout, and I'll do the same thing again and try to get to as many as we can at the end. But Freya, do you just mind telling me why social mobility matters so much to your organization?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, not just my organization, but you know, for KPMG especially, you know, we really recognize that everyone brings a unique perspective, and we really encourage applications then from a widest pool of talent to join the organization and bring their kind of unique perspective to us, their ideas along the way. So social mobility to us is all about creating that kind of fairer, more equitable society and making it a kind of a fair platform for all. You may have seen our vision is to drive opportunities in disadvantaged communities across the UK and ensure that no matter where you're from, no matter what your background is, it does not dictate what your life chances are and what your future is. So for us, it's really important that, you know, our long-term IDE action plan, our KPMG, A Fairer Future for All, really focuses on this. And we set kind of social economic background representation targets for the first time, and it's aiming to kind of bring through 29% of our people to from working class backgrounds by 2030, and that's something that we as an organisation are all, you know, working and striving towards to make sure that we are kind of meeting these targets. So one of our, you know, things to really show kind of like how important it is to us is that we actually have a social mobility network. It's called Upbringing. It's part of our one of our many networks at KPMG. But it really empowers colleagues from kind of less privileged backgrounds to achieve their development goals and also collectively share their experiences and support one another. You know, everyone will have gone through a slightly different background, even though you may be part of that group. So it's really important that we have this culture and this group that can come together and just build, you know, this sense of community within the KPMG side. And actually that was launched in 2021, and we have about over 800 members now as part of that network. So it just shows you kind of, you know, how important this is to us and how seriously we're taking this. So I'll let kind of Janine go next, but yeah, lots of different things that I can talk about in terms of what we're doing to really kind of bring social mobility to the forefront of, you know, what we're doing in our visions and our goals.
Thanks, Freya. Yeah, same for you, Janine. That's brilliant.
Great. I mean, I think Freya's done a very good job as to why we're all here today. I think it's very, very similar from my side. Look, I think diversity from Goldman Sachs' perspective has always been a huge priority for us. We've been running kind of women's programs for 20 years. So diversity isn't new, but I do think what has changed is the inclusion part of diversity. So I think, you know, really moving our mindset and our language and our approach to inclusion of all kinds. And that's really where I found, specifically from a social mobility perspective, we see such a broad interest across the firm. You know, some other diverse groups of people, some people are very interested, you know, wanting to help, or some people don't feel like they can help. But I find with social mobility, it just somewhat touches everybody, whether you come from that background yourself, or in fact, you come from the most privileged background, and now you realize all of those extra little helping hands you had along the way to get you there, and how you want to pay it forward to somebody else. So we've seen huge interest across the firm of people wanting to get involved. We're running big mentoring programs, and I can come on to that in a moment. But I guess why it's really important is it's not even something that we should just be doing it, because there's so much talent across the country. And for a very long time, we were quite narrow-minded in who and how we were recruiting, which schools we were going to, even which subject choices. I mean, if I roll the dice back, you know, 15 years ago when I joined, how we were recruiting to how we're doing it today, it is totally different in a very positive way, much more inclusive. And, you know, all of those kind of sound bites out there of, you know, I can't be what I can't see, or opportunities everywhere. I mean, talent everywhere, but opportunity is not. All of those things are so true. There's talent everywhere, and it's upon all of us to go out and find the talent and make our organizations have open doors and open minds, and making sure that we are inclusive, not just in our recruitment approach, but you know, to Freya's point, once people are in the door, how do we make people feel included? How do we set people up for success? And really, what guardrails do we put around, and what frameworks do we put around all of our diversity and inclusion efforts to make sure that the work really kind of starts when they step through the door, and we can all learn from each other. So definitely a journey, but huge focus right up from the top in terms of interest and making sure that we're doing this right from a Goldman Sachs perspective. So very similar to Freya, and I think we've got our work cut out for us, but it's not as easy as it sounds.
Amazing. Thanks, Janine. Yeah, well, it's clear that it's passionate to both of you. I knew that when I spoke to you last time. So yeah, that's really exciting to have you on board in this conversation. Just for everyone's information and for you two's information, I am still trying to get Tom into this conversation. This was something was always bound to go wrong with the online conference, but we will get there, and he'll burst on the screen soon, I hope. But we'll carry on for now, because it'd be great to hear about some of the work you've been doing to improve some social mobility in your organizations. We're going to look at a few key areas to start with. And all of these areas are actually assessed as part of the Social Mobility Foundation Employer Index. So first, we're going to look at attraction, which will hopefully be relevant to a lot of people in the audience. So Janine, can you talk a little bit, please, about what you've been doing? And before you do that, Janine, I'm going to say very sorry to Tom. I don't know what's happened, Tom. We've had trouble all week, haven't we, with this technology?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Yeah, I've just done it on my mobile for whatever reason. I can hear you guys, can see you guys, watch the brilliant session from Samsung, but here we are.
Oh, well, and is it Tom Lias or Tom Lias? That's what we want to know.
It's Lias, yeah, you got
it's
it
Lias,
right.
yeah, I thought I was all right, yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, Tom. Thanks for going through my list of dodgy instructions clearly and figuring it out.
No problem.
Tom, do you want to give us a quick intro that before we get back into the questions about who you are and your role and stuff?
Yes, very quickly. So Tom Lias, I'm the head of resourcing for the national law firm Browne Jacobson. So in June, I've been here for 7 years. I'd never worked in the legal sector until I came here. I joined previously from Whitbread, previously before Coca-Cola bought them, known for Costa Coffee and Premier Inn brands. And then prior to that, worked at the head office in Tesco for a number of years, working within the early careers team. And yeah, Nottingham based.
Love it. Yeah, I know you're not an base. We had a good chat about football the other day, didn't we, when we spoke? So that was interesting. Tom, I'll ask you the same question that I asked Janine and Freya, which is, why does social mobility matter so much to your organisation and to you, maybe?
And it's a really good question, and I think as well. I mean, it's I suppose one of the challenges it's getting the organisations to have it mean as much as it does to certain individuals. There was a very good article that came out last week, and somebody was sort of saying it's not enough to have a few individuals wanting to progress and push forward on social mobility. It requires the whole ship to go forward. But it creates a very vibrant workplace environment. That's kind of the first point. And particularly someone like a law firm or a service industry, it provides you a difference of perspective for business and clients' challenges. So actually, if everybody in an organisation is the same, you can't actually offer as good a product as you could without lots of different viewpoints. Obviously, the thing that really hurts for everybody, I should imagine, on this call, if you're focused on recruitment, is nobody wants to see good talent not get an opportunity, and to see somebody limited in their career prospects or progression prospects because of their background. It's 2023. We need to be doing more. And as I said, finally, if anybody, and I've heard some amazing questions. I would have loved to have answered a lot of the questions that Samson was asked. But he mentioned himself. There's a real kind of low social mobility actually really impacts the economy, and without it, it's not as good as we could be.
Brilliant. Well, got you just in the nick of time to give us that lovely intro, Tom. So thanks. Cool. All right, brilliant. So we can go into the questions now. And as I said, I'll just keep reminding people, do put your Q&As in, because I'm sure this wonderful panel will be up for answering them at the end. We'll get through as many as possible. And like any that you think that are interesting, because that way I can see which are the popular ones and which ones really might resonate with the audience. So Janine, coming back to yourself then, we're going to talk about attraction first of all. Can you please talk a bit about what you've been doing at Goldman Sachs to attract candidates from disadvantaged backgrounds?
Sure. So I think what we realized a while ago is, yes, we have interest, yes, we have passion, but how are we actually going to get to the students? Because for a lot of students that are applying to an investment bank like ours, they know who we are, they know what we do, and some of them even know exactly which team or desk they want to sit on. And when you think about students who come from perhaps, families or communities where investment banking or the city or those type of jobs, financial services jobs, are just totally foreign, even putting an application in, they probably wouldn't even know where to start. So if we were, advertising or marketing jobs or events or insight days to come along, we weren't even getting people to apply because they didn't even know we existed, or if they did, they certainly didn't think that they were the people we wanted to come through the door. So what we've done a lot of, and the team's done a brilliant job, is really building relationships with very successful charities and organizations in this space, as well as sixth form schools, colleges and kind of high schools, because what we were finding as well is because we were typically a graduate recruiter, so we were waiting for everyone to finish high school, go off to university, and then know who we are and go onto our website and make an application. And that was attracting a certain type of student. So what we've done now is really built relationships with these schools and organizations to get into the hearts and minds of these students before some of them are even, opting out of pathways that could lead them to an organization such as ours. So I think that's the first thing we've done, and really strongly built mentoring programs as well. So just to give you a sense of the interest of the firm, we sent out an email saying if you would like to be a mentor to a social mobility student across the UK, sign up here. And we had over 500 people sign up, I think it was in the first 24 hours. Now, I've never had 500 people sign up to any of my other recruiting events. So that was a very positive start. And what we're finding is people are getting so much out of those mentoring conversations, those mentoring partnerships, really taking an added interest, and not necessarily about getting a job at Goldman. Getting a job anyway, we just take for granted the networks of people that we have. And if a mentee is interested in working at a law firm or working in technology or working in, chances are somebody around our table knows somebody that they can be introduced to. And we found the biggest kind of barrier really is that network, not having a network. And we are trying very hard to do that. So I think that's broad brush, some of the stuff that we've been doing. But if we drill into a couple of examples of things that we've actually done recently, so we ran, we partnered with Teach First actually, and we ran a Teach First residential program. So we had students from all over the UK travel to London. I think all but a couple had never even been to London before. So these are people from across the UK. They came to London for 3 days and 2 nights with their teachers. So we had 10 students from 10 different schools targeting social mobility cold spots. So really, really students that had absolutely no idea who or what we were. And they came to London with these, I think, we actually asked the schools to pick the students, not necessarily the students that were getting the best grades, but what about the students that will give this opportunity the most enthusiasm, will come in with open arms and open hearts and open minds and take this opportunity. And they came in, and I have to say our buildings are probably quite terrifying even just to walk through the doors and into a big auditorium that lots of the students said looks like the United Nations. But what was extraordinary is after the 3 days, some of them were on the stage presenting and debating and sharing their experience, and so many of them were saying, I had no idea I could do this job, or I had no idea that was even something. I'm so interested in writing. I didn't know journalism was something that I could even do as a career. So really, really opening hearts and minds. And we've seen terrific success off the back of that, and having them go back to their schools and say, this is what I did, this is what I learned, and this is what I saw. So I think those are quite powerful. And then we've been running a student possibilities program as well, which is our social mobility program that is geared more towards students already at university. And they come in and we really try and kind of set them up for success ahead of internships. We're also finding that some students are, they've got fantastic enthusiasm, they've got fantastic interest, they've got, super smart, they've done amazing things, juggling a million different priorities at home. But when they come through the door for an internship, everyone just is quick out the gates and is quite fast to get moving on those programs. And what we want to do is make sure that the students who perhaps don't know, what does it mean to network? What does it mean to do an elevator pitch? What does it mean when you bump into somebody at the tea point? And how do you get the most out of that conversation? How do you follow up? Is it okay to send an email and say, can we have a coffee to hear more about that? And sometimes it's really down to those basics, but it's all down to confidence. So what we've been doing with our Student Possibilities program is bringing some of those groups of students into the building before the programs kick off, giving them their own network first and foremost, but secondly, really building their confidence. And I think that makes a huge difference. So when the program does start, they too can jump up the blocks and feel confident to do so. So those are just 2 examples that I would share today, but there are many more.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure you could have talked for longer, Janine, like most people today, but I'm having to cut people off.
I'm going to stop myself and let everybody else share their examples, because I'd love to learn from the others.
Brilliant. Well, you were very efficient there, so thank you so much. Brilliant, thank you. So next we're going to talk about recruitment and selection. So another area that firms obviously you need to focus on and can be assessed when they look at the employer index from the Social Mobility Foundation. So Freya, can you please tell us about the work that KPMG have done in this area?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, I just want to kind of echo everything that Janine had said there in terms of that confidence. You know, as a professional services firm, we sometimes have this misconception that people, you know, can't apply to us. You need to be from a certain background. You need to, you know, be a certain kind of, you know, character, whatever it might be. And that's just not the case. You know, as we've all mentioned, you know, to have that, you know, unique perspectives from every individual, from every background, not only kind of makes the organization stronger in terms of our culture, but also the delivery that we give out to, you know, the clients that we work with, the projects that we do. So yeah, definitely I can definitely echo what Janine's just said there. But I will focus on recruitment and selection, because I could also talk a lot about all the attraction work we do, but I appreciate we have got our own areas. So I guess from our side, one of the big, you know, changes that we have made in terms of our processes is in 2021 we actually introduced a strength-based assessment. So what this actually allows is for candidates to answer in a way that doesn't draw on past experiences. So we understand that, you know, the talent out there doesn't necessarily mean that you have had, you know, access to a work placement or an internship somewhere else. It could be that you have just got these skills or these strengths naturally or through other means, you know, something that you've done at school, something that you've done at university. And so these strength-based assessments, what they really allow for is that instead of, you know, somebody using a past situation or, you know, relying on something that they have done previously, what they can do is they can answer it within kind of the context that they're using that question for. So it's a really great tool that we're using to allow people to answer questions and really understand actually what motivates them, what drives them, what energizes them. We actually also recently introduced this year contextualized recruitment, which is for all of our intakes, that's graduate and apprentices. So at KPMG, we offer opportunities to kind of graduate levels as well as school leaver levels. And the contextualized recruitment has been introduced as a new approach, which places really greater focus on individuals' overall potential and really considers the academic results in the context in which they were achieved. So you're looking at kind of both the social economic side of somebody as well as their extenuating circumstances, and then, you know, looking at that in terms of determining, you know, the academic results that were given. So as well as this, I've had as well conversations from the previous talk about kind of broadening entry requirements. So we have been doing that for our specific programs. So such like our technology programs, we have broadened that up in terms of the degree requirement for that. So yeah, I think conversations before we're talking about, you know, the 2-1s and the 2-2s, that kind of thing. Actually, talent is still out there, you know, in terms of those grades, and that doesn't necessarily determine kind of what you will bring to an organisation. So we've also kind of been focusing on that as well. And then just in terms of our recruitment process itself, we actually operate on a blind recruitment basis. And what that essentially means is that we don't accept CVs. So nobody sends us a CV, we don't ask for CVs. What we actually ask you to do is to fill in kind of an application online for us to kind of determine kind of your grades within that contextualized recruitment side. And therefore CVs are not provided to any of our interviewers, not given to kind of across any of the process, to just in case, you know, to make sure that we're really eliminating that unconscious bias that might come through, and again really promote that diversity and inclusion that we have. So when making an application to us, you will not need to kind of create a CV, which many kind of students wouldn't even know where, you know, wouldn't know how to create a CV or know how to do that. So it's really important that we you know, do operate on that blind recruitment basis. And then just in terms of our interviewers, you know, all interviewers throughout our student programs must complete mandatory training that includes both a safeguarding side. We understand that there are vulnerable adults and we need to be absolutely clear on the do's and don'ts of that, and also unconscious bias training. So unconscious bias training is a really great tool to give to our interviewers. You know, people don't always necessarily know that they're being consciously, you know, being biased, and so it's really important that we are showing them actually these are some things that, you know, could creep in, and how do we eliminate that, and how do we make sure that we are, you know, taking the answers that they are and really viewing that talent and the answers that the candidates are given. So all our interviews will be undertaking that before they conduct any interviews. As well as that training, we also provide mandatory IDE training to all our UK colleagues. So regardless if you're doing interviews or not, it's really important for us that everyone in the business that might connect well with anyone else in the business, but also any of the candidates coming through, are undertaking this training to really include a section around social economic disadvantages and the invisible barriers that exist as part of that. So, once, people join us, we're all aware of those invisible barriers and how we can overcome them and work together to make sure people are successful in role and people do, have all of the, pathways that they can to do a really great job for us and really kind of showcase their talent. And then just kind of finally, just kind of talking about, again, kind of touching on what Janine said before, that confidence building, as part of our recruitment side, we have we've been running our Social Ability Awards since 2021. And this is aimed at giving universities, schools and college students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds the opportunity to increase employability skills and build confidence. The programme is also designed to be a gateway into for participants to apply to our graduate and apprenticeship programmes and through our formal work experience. So they'll have opportunities to kind of get the skills, really learn, understand it, and then have that gateway through there. And actually for 2023, we have introduced and launched a new Social Ability Talent Insight programme, which is a work experience programme that we run, and it's for, which again provides students an insight into the working world of KPMG, what that looks like, and again provides that pathway to applying for our other programs off the back of it. So they come, they build their confidence, they learn what we do, and if it's not right for them, they can also go elsewhere, but hopefully it just gives them the opportunities to understand, actually this is what it's like here, this is what it looks like. As Janine said, it's a very scary for someone to come to a big organization and kind of make that decision without really understanding what the culture, what the insides, all the working mechanics are like. So it's really important that, candidates can come and experience that and then have that pathway on if they want to make that application. So, yeah. Perfect.
Thank you so much, Freya. Yeah, loads of like tangible stuff that you're obviously doing in that area. So it's good to hear, a nice taster of that. So thank you so much. Tom, hey, so let's talk about maybe one of the areas that can be tricky to get right. You'll be pleased to hear is progression. So you said you saw Tom Sampson's session earlier. Someone asked about it, but could you maybe talk to us about what you do at Browne Jacobson to progress employees from disadvantaged backgrounds once they're in the business?
Yeah, certainly. And sorry, just every day's a school day, as they say. I've just realised if you press the button that I thought would turn up the volume, it actually kicks me out of the webinar. So I won't be pressing that button, so I'll mute myself again. Look, thank you for giving me the opportunity just to talk about the progression, and Samson certainly has teed me up extremely nicely for this. What I would say, both from Janine and Freya, is while you can look at these three parts of social mobility, the attraction, the selection, and then the progression, you have to actually look at them holistically as start to finish. And the reason why is, what Janine and Freya are doing is they're filling the hopper, with candidates, obviously ideally from a low socioeconomic background. But if you're putting them into an environment which isn't supportive, sustainable, or ready to take a significant number of individuals from that background and set them up for success, you're going to fail at every level, not just in progression, but you're going to fail at recruitment and attraction, because very quickly people will realise that, hang on, I know you say this, but it's not like that when you get here. So from our side, as I said, I think we've got 4 or 5 minutes for each session, so I'll try and be as succinct as I can, and then we'll take the questions. But it really starts with kind of disclosure. And again, Samson references countless times, as will everybody else. Without data, you just don't know what you have and what you need to kind of fix in terms of your workforce demographic. So progression starts with doing surveys, having a look, and saying, actually, what is the demographic? What's the makeup of our organisation? To get good disclosure, and we have 91% kind of disclosure in our employee surveys in terms of engagement, which is, I think, reasonably high. I'd like it to be higher, but that's where we are. And the reason we do that is, social mobility has been a thing for Browne Jacobson for a decade plus, and we've really created this compelling shared vision around socioeconomic diversity and inclusion within the firm. But it takes a long time to get that. I'm not here to say do this and you'll solve your issues tomorrow. It's never going to happen. But the sooner you start creating that environment, making people show that you care and it's important, the sooner you'll start to get higher engagement, better data, And then from that, once you know what you've got, you know what you need to fix, and then you can set yourself targets, but start with very realistic targets for progression. I guess in terms of today, giving something to take away, I mean, you've done so much hard work to attract and select these wonderful individuals and open this talent pool. You don't want to let them down at the onboarding stage. So what you need is a bespoke onboarding program. If you had somebody who was coming in with a disability, of course you'd make reasonable adjustments to make sure that they're set up for success and they land properly. And it's no different for somebody from a low socioeconomic background if you understand them. So that's my first point, is look at your onboarding and as I said, make sure it is fit for purpose. And this can be as simple, particularly early careers. I mean, Freya referenced it, and I think Janine did. It can be intimidating coming into some of our organisations. Just looking at the building, going into an office environment, and it's a really nice but slightly worrying byproduct of the wonderful shift in selection policy that we're seeing. You're going away from people with experience to people with potential. But I know, having done this for a long time, that if you're looking to put a potential-based recruitment process and selection process in place, you're going to have people who come through who've got amazing potential, but they don't have any experience. And that could even be, I've never been in an office. And you need to set them up for success so that it's not such an alien environment. Day one should never feel like day one. So you need a really personal, bespoke onboarding program. Secondly, and this is kind of something which really I think we're all going to turn a mirror on ourselves here and say, yeah, okay, we might be guilty of this. How much do we all do externally? How much interview training, assessment training, hints and tips to get through this do you give externally? How much do you do that internally? That's the question. So we've done the same. So when it comes to progression, we have seen it's harder for individuals from low socioeconomic backgrounds to get NQ roles, to get promoted. And so what we've done is we've put in, promotion training. How do you do interview coaching, interview practice, interview training? In some areas, they have to put a business plan together. Some of these guys have never done this in their life. And how do you know what to do if nobody's shown you? So you have to try and do the same internally as you would do externally, in terms of hints and tips to get people through various selection criteria. I think as well, one thing I'm really proud of here is we've got an extremely transparent promotion process and the various thresholds that are required to do that. So people know what they need to do well in advance before they put themselves forward to it. Again, a couple of other bits, and I'm slightly straying into territory of Janine and Freya here, but we haven't done this yet. I'll be honest, I am definitely trying to get this through, and I want to. I understand some of the reasons why, but I know this is going to spark a bit of debate, is putting salaries on your adverts rather than this is competitive or this is this, so people know what they're applying to. That's for perhaps a debate for another day. Again, slightly straying into territory, but job specs that actually reflect what the requirements of the role are. I can absolutely tell you, after nearly 22 years of doing this, that it's amazing if you have great academics. Of course it is, but to Freya's point, as long as it's in context to your background, the school, the uni, whatever you went to, the socioeconomic background of the household you grew up in, etc. But actually, I have seen so many times where there are experience requirements or thresholds around academics for entry-level roles that you'd have thought, Christ, you need 3 years worth of experience to do this, and it's just not fair. I think as well, it feeds into the graduate market, but if you have targets around socioeconomic diversity within your senior populations, that's great, but it does then drip down into and cascade down into the lower levels. So get some targets in place so that you can actually have something to aim for. A couple of other things, and then I'll try and wrap up. So we give a week's worth of exclusivity internally when we're advertising roles before it goes to the external market. Just gives people a bit of a head start against that, looking at the external talent. And then finally as well, we have a wonderful, it's absolutely fantastic, in-person work experience program called FAIR. but actually what we're looking at is putting a internal work experience program together, because we do all this stuff again for externals, but actually when you're internal, what about if I want to move into finance, or I wanted to move into marketing, or I wanted to be a lawyer? And we're looking at putting a week's worth of work experience in place for internals, just to see that they get that opportunity that would be parity to externals.
Brilliant. Cutting you off short, all of you, I know, but some really good stuff. Thanks, Tom. Cool. Let's move on to some challenges and overcoming those challenges. And I think they'll obviously vary slightly between the companies. And I guess something to bear in mind a little bit maybe is there'll be lots of smaller organizations listening, and maybe when we get into the quick questions at the end, maybe we can offer some advice to these. But let's think about challenges that you've faced in improving social mobility and how you've overcome them as organizations. Does anyone want to start us off here? Freya, I can see you itching to go.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to start. I mean, obviously it's super clear here that, you know, focusing on social economic background diversity is growing. You know, it's absolutely something that we all want to do more of. I think probably something that we have struggled with in the past is, I think, kind of as Tom's alluded to, is the data side of it. You know, getting accurate data around this. So or obtaining true data, I guess, can be difficult, where people are not sure where they fall into this, you know, into this group, or, you know, how is it measured, or, you know, does it kind of, does it consider or evaluate some of the other, you know, measures around social, you know, economic background? And I think there has been quite a few policy changes within this, so regarding eligibility and what that is. And I think, you know, over the years, making those comparisons therefore have been quite difficult to see kind of from year on year, you know, what does that, you know, what does that data look like and what there is. I know that, you know, it has become a lot clearer, and there's a lot more tools now to find out kind of, you know, what does it mean? How do you kind of classify it? But even from there, I think there's still, you know, a stigma around things such like, you know, receiving free school meals, for instance, which, you know, can fall part of that category. You know, that doesn't mean that everyone will necessarily disclose it to us, you know, or maybe they don't, are not even aware that their school were eligible for this, or they were eligible for this as a child. So I think it's, you know, from our side, making it really clear, you know, what that eligibility criteria looks like, what that is, kind of dictated by, you know, different organisations, charity, governments that we work with, policies as well, so that the, you know, candidates making those applications are really clear, you know, does that kind of fit with me and does that not? And also being really clear to say that this data is not used as part of anything within the recruitment process. So, you know, don't be afraid to let us know about this, because this is not going to be sent on to the hiring manager or the interviewer. This is, you know, for us just to really understand how can we improve and how can we, you know, support, you know, people from this background, you know, in next years and previous years, and looking at the data as a whole.
Thanks, Freya. Does anyone else want to come in next?
I would just totally agree. I think data is kind of the key takeaway. And I think it's firstly collecting the data, to Freya's point, is not straightforward. You know, we work in a massive global organization. Our systems and questions of application forms are global, and it doesn't mean anything outside of the UK. Free school meals. So we've had to do a lot of work systematically to make sure that the people answering the questions are actually even in scope to answer the questions, because that could mean something, it does mean something totally different in France or in Germany or in the US. So I think the data piece is a challenge for sure. And then I think there is some sensitivity around, you know, people not wanting to give that information, or not wanting to be put in that bucket, or not wanting their manager to know that that's their home life and their background, and in fact wanting to keep that totally separate from work. So, you know, it's not straightforward. So the data, we started collecting the data about 5 years ago. And to be honest, I remember when we first started having some of these conversations, people asked the question, well, how are we doing today? And my simple answer was, I have no idea, because we don't collect the data. So, you know, very much started the process and making tweaks along the way. And the UK government, I think, have come out with, you know, helpful guardrails and questions that we can all be asking, but it still doesn't fit into the broader recruitment process as we recruit very, very globally across the firm. So that's definitely a challenge. And then I think the other one for us is kind of those kind of social mobility cold spots, because we are, you know, London based. We do have an office now in Birmingham, which is terrific, and a small one in Milton Keynes for our Marcus Bank. But we really used to recruit a lot more people around London, and how do we get out to, and the challenge for us is getting into those little coastal towns along the UK and getting into the classrooms and into the minds of students that don't live anywhere near the schools that we would ordinarily be going to. So I think those are all kind of challenges that we're facing. But yes, and I think the progression piece that Tom spoke so eloquently about is one, again, because the data is getting there, but some people don't want to be classified as all of that. So making it fair, making it subjective, but also educating people about why, I think, is important, and also educating people about what additional needs people may have, and not additional needs in a negative way, additional needs in an inclusive way. And some conversations may be a bit tricky, but getting more comfortable having them as an organization, much like we were having them 15 years ago about women. And we've come a long way on that front. So I think this is, certainly for us, it feels like we're still starting the journey. We're in it, but we've got some way to go in terms of getting everybody comfortable and everybody kind of brought into those types of conversations and really understanding the why.
Amazing. Thanks, Janine. What about yourself, Tom? Any challenges that spring to mind?
Yeah, plenty. I mean, challenges, as I said, it's just a hurdle to try and overcome, isn't it? I mean, there's a couple of things from our side. I guess I put it into three categories. I mean, yeah, we're very proud, to be the #1 ranked employer in the Social Mobility Foundation's index for the last 2 years. There are 4 of us in our team. We have so little money, and we're 1,000 people. We are literally a brand that very few people have heard of. Yet here we are on top of this table. And I think the reason for that is actually we don't have any real financial or human resources available to us. But what we do have is, let's challenge what the norm is. So, we've heard on this call already, the things that make a difference are looking in context, somebody's background, doing anonymous CVs, removing academics. They don't cost any money. You can make that decision tomorrow. And actually, one of the biggest challenges that we all face is everyone's like, oh, it's too difficult. With our processes is too hard to change. You can change it if you really want to. So I would say that. A really good example, Sam said again, reference this, and so it's a well-versed story now, but just to put into perspective how sometimes what you hear, you just believe so strongly, and actually somebody comes along, asks a question, you think, wow, okay, maybe we should have seen that. So I was asked, when we took the academic criteria off here, so you didn't need a 2-1 and an A and 2 Bs at A-level, I'm not gonna lie, I got called to come to the board and explain what I'd done, and thought that the world was going to end because we're going to get terribly poor quality graduates. I was quite happy to then go into that board and said, okay, look, tell me what success looks like. And they said, oh, a partner, it's the most successful position that you can have in a law firm. I was like, yeah, great, okay, fantastic. And so what's your justification for a 2-1 A, 2 Bs? There wasn't really any good rationale for that. And then it's when I said, well, actually, did you know 20% of you, 1 in 5 of the successful partners actually has a 2-2 and you can't apply for your own graduate program? That's when the penny dropped. So I would say the data is actually incredibly helpful to come up against any challenge, particularly around things like that, because it's there if you go looking. I can guarantee you it's there if you go looking. And then I think, as I said, it really is just challenge the process, challenge the process.
Brilliant. So challenges, challenge the challenge, challenge it if you're getting challenged, basically. Yeah, lots of challenging going on. Brilliant. Thank you, Tom. Any other things to touch on there that spring to mind at all? No worries. If not, we'll move on to the next question. There's going to be loads from the audience anyway. Before we get to the audience questions, then let's try and sum up, even shorter than you have done previously, maybe one piece of advice each that you'd like to give to organizations who want to improve their social mobility. Do you want to start with yourself, Janine?
Sure. I think the one piece of advice I would say is to connect the dots within your organization, because what we find a lot is the more we speak to different pockets of people across the firm about what we're doing in this space or what we're finding or people that we've brought in, other people are like, oh, I sit on this board, or I volunteer at this charity, or I came from that exact school, I'd love to mentor that person. And until you're having those conversations, people are just operating and going off and doing amazing stuff. And quite honestly, I think just bubbling this topic up right up to the top and talking about it and having it part of the dialogue is the biggest piece of advice I can say, because the more we're talking about it, the more amazing nuggets of gold dust we are finding within the organization that people are doing already as part of their own background, their own interest, their own passions. And if we can collate all of that and bring it together, what a mammoth and, effective group of people we could have. So I think the mentoring and the, bringing all of that together, I think is quite powerful. And also for those organizations out there that have done nothing so far, or you don't have a big enough organization, or you don't have a big enough team, just having the dialogue is the perfect place to start, because sometimes it just takes one person and one success story, and suddenly you're talking about, remember that hire Sam that we made, and he came from that village and now he's in this desk, and then he just got promoted to VP and he's now mentoring somebody else. Like, those stories become real and they multiply. And so never be afraid to start the journey, and never be afraid to ask the challenging questions.
Perfect, brilliant. What about yourself, Freya?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, Tom kind of touched on this, but no matter the size of your company, no matter the funds, the resources, there is a number of different ways that you can get involved and support, even if it's from something like, leadership culture side, those are, free things that you can do, like initiatives, putting in a working group for sociability that focuses that on, in the business, to make sure that people do feel supported or have someone to talk to or connect with, getting your leadership to be brave. Why don't they, you've got someone from that background, can they post something up on their LinkedIn site perhaps and talk about their experience at the company, how they overcome some of these barriers, and really showcase that actually you're inclusive and you include, you want all this talent to come through. I think, sometimes sociability can sit within corporate responsibility, and actually it's something that everyone in the firm needs to kind of get on board with, be involved with, to really drive it forward. So yeah, definitely, I think be brave and just thinking of some of those things just outside the box that you could do. Like I say, you don't need to have loads of money or resources to do this, but we even just look at some of the stats that are coming out in the UK. Approximately half the adult population have the mass ability of 11-year-old. Is there a group within your organization that might want to go to some schools and offer some volunteering on that side, or do you want to do a work experience within the company? Again, it doesn't have to be a massive work experience. You could be bringing in a small group in and giving them that insight, giving them those soft skills for them to take on and use for their future.
Thanks, Freya. And Tom, any advice you can give?
Yeah, just certainly it's the obvious thing to say, but without some sort of proactive initiative, very little is going to change for you, and if it does change, it's going to be incredibly slowly. So you can start doing something about this tomorrow, and as I just said, some of the things that are very, very impactful, they don't need to cost anything. So you don't need to go fighting out to get budget, etc. I think as well, the only other piece I would say is, just ask yourself the question, how much you do it for the external market, all of those skill sessions, everything that you focused on, do you do enough for the people that are already in your organization? So yeah, they'd be my two takeaways.
Amazing. Thank you so much, all. So we're going to get to some questions now, and we'll get through as many as possible. The first one I think is a good place to start is around data, because we've had a few questions on that. So it's around social mobility indicators. So what are the questions that you're asking? How do you know if someone is from a disadvantaged background, etc.? So there's a few questions around that. So it'd be good to touch on that and see if we can sort of nail down the characteristics that we're asking about. That's open to anyone, by the way.
From our side, I'll just jump in and go first. I mean, there's 4 or 5 things that we would particularly focus on, but I think it's been a few committees, social mobility commission, sort of narrowed it down really to the main one being parental occupation at the age of 14. Mm-hmm. So that for us is our kind of gold standard question. We do ask, have you had care experience, first gen to university, free school meals, etc. But the biggest one for us is parental occupation age 14.
Yeah, we also ask if they're first generation to go to university. Yeah. Because I think that for us is a very interesting one. And then we do ask the free school meals. for those that were educated here in the UK.
Is that the same for you, Freya?
Yeah, definitely, all of those things. So, you know, state school, free school meals, first gen to university, and parental occupation, all falls in that, and the care side as well.
Brilliant, thank you. It's a question here. So it's clear that, you know, well, all of you have made changes to the recruitment processes and tried to communicate that. So what have you done things, and is there things that you can do to make it clear to students the changes that you have made and why? Someone's asking because there was some research a couple of years ago from Bright Network that showed that many students aren't aware always of initiatives that employers are involved in or things that they've changed. So how can we do that and make sure students know about these changes?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. One is your job description, your website, whatever you're using to advertise your roles or programs or you know, work on, and making it really clear on there, you know, right at that point of application, what, you know, things are being taken into account, what does that look like, and the reasons why for that. Equally, if you are running kind of any kind of work experience, internships, whatever that might be, you know, talking about it then, talking about, you know, if you do decide to, you know, want to make an application to us and go ahead with that, you know, these are the things that you know are part of that, or things that we are doing to support you in achieving the best that you can throughout that process.
Yeah, brilliant. Any other points on that at all?
I'd just add that we've become, I guess, a little bit braver at actually referring to it as a social mobility program or a social mobility, you know, insight day. So that we, you know, linking and labeling, literally just being more transparent. And then the other one that we're doing a lot of, as I mentioned before, is partnering with social mobility organizations, because a lot of these students will be able to have, or will have access or a partnership or allegiance to some of these organizations more than to a company that they've never heard of, or London or a city. So, you know, really partnering and showing our brand alongside these big social mobility organizations such as yourselves and others. I think that again is a really powerful way to showcase our commitment to social mobility as a main part of our inclusion strategy.
Okay, brilliant. Another question then, this is quite an interesting one, so I'm happy for anyone to jump in. How do you ensure your promotion of diversity and diverse hiring practices comes across as genuine and not tokenistic? Tricky one.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. So as mentioned, we operate on a blind recruit basis. So in terms of what our hiring managers receive, they don't receive any CVs from any of our candidates. They just kind of get a name, obviously, from the interview side. They don't see kind of things like their previous applications to us or anything like that. So actually the communication that our interviewers are having with all our candidates is, you know, is the same, because, you know, they don't have kind of that, like I say, unconscious bias maybe creeping in, or any kind of preconceptions of anyone. All they know that they've passed our kind of first online stages, and so hopefully, you know, they do feel it's really kind of genuine. You know, these are all our internal colleagues who conduct interviews, they are all coming into their team, so it's a really, you know, authentic interview that they're having, because they really obviously have invested in these candidates to make sure that they're getting the right candidates into their team later on down the line.
I'll just chip in with that as well. I think, again, you know, lots of good use of role models, openly talking about kind of their experience. And I think, again, you know, that is what would really inspire someone, you know, if they're from a disadvantaged background, to see somebody like them, you know, whatever term that covers, shows that it is an authentic piece. I would also throw it back to any student. I know, you know, not necessarily on the call today, but I would say to a student in an interview, ask the question and say, so what are your credentials? What's your data? Tell me, what have you done to progress this? I've seen this and it looks good, but actually show me, demonstrate it, prove it to me. You'll know very, very quickly if that person is authentic or not.
Oh, I think you might be on mute.
Yes, at least once a session it will happen. Thanks, Freya.
Right.
So this one's maybe throw you all out of your comfort zone a little bit, hopefully not too much, but it's someone who works for a small firm with an HR team of one. Okay, so we're falling at the first hurdle in attracting applications from diverse backgrounds. Which routes would you recommend as most effective in attracting socio-economically diverse applications, bearing in mind our more limited resources? We've already broadened our entry requirements, updated our application questions, and advertised widely on job boards. So they've done a few things, obviously, that moving along the journey, but any advice that can be given would be much appreciated.
Yeah, I'm happy to go
on,
again.
Freya.
Sorry, I feel like I'm just going first, but if anyone wants to jump in, please do. Absolutely, obviously, there's one person in HR that does limit the resource. However, there are obviously multiple people across the business. So getting your business involved, you know, do they want to go out and speak to a school perhaps and talk about their experience? Do they want to post something up on LinkedIn about their experience and what they've done? Again, showcasing, you know, that authentic side of your colleagues and employees about, you know, their experiences, what they've gone through, to really show the inclusivity that you are as a firm.
Yeah, I would just add as well to Tom's point that he's made earlier, it's also about educating the people inside the firm about the importance of this. So even if there's a, you know, it might not be the ticking every box of social mobility, but just difference. Some CVs coming in or applications coming in that don't look the same as everybody else, don't just put them to one side as the person in the business who's doing the, you know, the yes no pile. I think it's just really being inclusive in our mindset, and I think that's the biggest challenge. That, you know, it doesn't matter how big your HR department is, it's the people in the business that are ultimately going to be doing a lot of these interviewing. It's their mindset, and it's making sure that they are challenging themselves, and you as that one person who sounds like they've done an amazing job of doing all those things already. So considering what a fantastic job they're doing, just having those conversations, and they can be a little bit tricky, but just pushing people out of their comfort zone to not put somebody in the no pile for reasons that we probably all know what those can be.
And it's to whoever the one person is who's on the call today. You're here at an event based on social mobility, so it clearly matters to you. And it could be as simple as even just posting something after this saying, you know, I was at a brilliant event today. Yeah, this is really important to me. It's part of our firm. We're looking to do this. And that's one step closer to it.
Definitely.
Thank you so much, guys. There's a few questions around international stuff. So maybe international candidates or international or companies that are working in other countries. So do you have to have different questions for people from international different countries? Obviously, a lot of the questions are geared towards UK nationals and stuff like that. So just keen to hear a bit of a broad question, really, but any thoughts on the international side of things and how we can impact that outside of the UK?
I can jump in on that one because we deal with this every day. I think the one question, which is universal to some degree, is, are you first generation to go to university? Because that doesn't really matter, you know, where you live and what, so, you know, what the kind of criteria are. As I said before, I think the UK has done a really good job of putting this like total framework around for all of us, but it does really slice the data into one segment versus everyone that's applying. So it's not as straightforward when you're dealing with countries around the world, different education systems, different levels of what does socioeconomic really mean. So I think the one characteristic that we've kind of somewhat leveled ourselves on is first generation. And then in the US, we work a lot with, you know, HBCUs and different schools in the US who also have students, obviously, that come from different backgrounds. So unfortunately, it's not a straight cut answer, I know, that fits every country, because it is quite different. And actually disclosing and asking for that information in every country is different as well. So there's legal hurdles to get through, which I wouldn't, you know, underestimate. So I think the one that we've kind of settled on is first generation to go to university. Yeah, and the other thing I think which is interesting, which I haven't mentioned and it hasn't come up so far, but just definitely want to mention it today, is apprentices. So I think from a social mobility angle, us as a firm, you know, having 18-year-olds on our trading floor, straight out of high school, doing a degree whilst working on the trading floor and bringing this concept of apprentices in, I think that's a really powerful, you know, opportunity for all of us based here in the UK to think through how can we leverage what the, you know, the framework. So I would hate the session to end without a throw out and a shout out to all of those interested in apprentices as well, because I think that's a fantastic option as well for students.
Brilliant, thank you. We're going to try and get through a couple of more. Next session's not till 12:15. If you don't, if you're happy, guys, is that okay? Yeah. Okay, cool. So we've touched a little bit on this one probably already. So this one is about what can SMEs do. So I feel like we've probably addressed that, so to speak. But in terms of other ones, so how do you deal with the aspect of anonymizing CVs of your candidates to hiring managers? Is this something they accept, or is this something you do not do? Yeah, how's those conversations? Can it be difficult and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I mean, I've said about quite a number of times now, we operate on a blind recruitment basis. But yeah, so in terms of anonymising that, our interviewers that complete kind of our final stages, and throughout the assessment process, we don't accept CVs, we don't have CVs. They, at that point of when they're kind of doing an interview, we give the name out. Obviously, they need to know who they're, hello to the candidate. But we don't give out any other information apart from that. And in terms from a business side, we make it really clear why. There's lots of talent out there. We do the unconscious bias training and what that means and why we do it. And the company I'm really fortunate that I work for a company that are really on board from a social ability side and really want to, do more in this space and improve in this space. So in terms of kind of reasons for that, in terms of any pushback that we get very limited amount. And if we do, what we say is, they pass these other online exercises, and that really is our benchmarking criteria for getting through to this point of interview. So if they've done that, they're showing us already they've got the skill set. So you don't need to see all the other bits of information to that, because what extra would that give you in order to showcase if a candidate has got the right talent or skill set that's required? We did a lot of research within the businesses to what makes a success on role, what makes someone do well in the position, and that's what we're assessing throughout the process. So to understand kind of the school they went to, location that they're from, those things are not kind of relevant necessarily to them achieving or doing well on role.
I think from our side, again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the data is incredibly powerful. And it can even be as simple. I remember we did, for us, we're kind of quite a ballsy recruitment team. And we sort of say, look, you pay us, we're the experts, so let's try it. And if you don't like it, we'll discuss it. And we're quite comfortable having those kind of conversations with the stakeholders. But there is an element of satisfaction to some extent where you go through an assessment centre, you've got some naysayers or happy hoovers, whatever you want to kind of call them, and then you sort of saying, right, okay, talk me through the two candidates you've seen today. You don't know anything about them, obviously, and when they're kind of like, look, they're fantastic, there's just literally nothing to split them, can we take them both? But this is somebody who would be like, usually I want Oxbridge or Russell Group and whatever. Mm-hmm. And I know that's not directly related to socioeconomic circumstance, but there's definitely some intersectionality and crossover here. But actually to then say, look, hearing such positive impressions from your candidates, and then when you do say, well, actually that person failed a few A levels, just getting to university in context of their backgrounds, and they got a 2-2, but here you are not knowing that, telling me how fantastic they are. That is when you start to make progress and you start to overcome those challenges. And it is, don't get me wrong, there'll be some incredibly uncomfortable conversations along the way. You'll also have stakeholders trying to go around the process. Of course they will. And I think what you then need to do is, as I said, it comes back to right from the senior leadership saying, this matters to us. We're not asking you to do it. This is a directive that says this matters to us. Allows you to hold some people who do occasionally go around the process to account.
Amazing. Right. We're not going to get to all the questions. It's actually impossible, but I'm trying to squeeze in as many as possible because I like the look of this one. What pitfalls should an employer who is at an early stage of this journey and setting up a D&I agenda be aware of, and how can these be minimized?
I can offer one if you want. one thing about, I mean, a couple of just, these are thoughts, they're spilling out my head as I'm saying it. So don't try and do too much too quickly, because you'll totally fall over. Pick one or two areas, and if we're talking kind of the broad spectrum of diversity and inclusion here, and set yourself realistic targets. Otherwise, you're shooting in the dark. You have got absolutely no idea what you're trying to achieve. So one or two things over a relatable period of time, and it might just be as simple as we'll be better next year. Simple as that. Don't even put a figure on it. Just we'll be better than next year. Than last year. So I would say have a plan.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tom. And just finally, final question, and we're going to wrap up. Has there been an intervention or one piece of action, let's say, that you've put in place at your organization that's made a really big difference to the talent that you've seen joining your organization? So is there one big thing? I know we've touched on loads of things today, but has there been one clear thing that you've put in charge that you think has really made the biggest difference or a real big impact at the time or further down the line? It's a tricky question, I know, but if anyone's got any good thoughts on that, that'd be great.
I'll chime in. It's not a specific thing, so to speak, but I think the conversation and the dialogue and how that's evolved over time. So having that dialogue right up, we have our inclusion and diversity committee, who is made up of the most senior people across the firm, talking about it. In fact, I'm going tomorrow, but talking about this topic, exactly this topic, and then trickling it down and just having the dialogue. Because I feel like sometimes when something is really new, really foreign, terminologies, cold spots, free school meals, like some of the stuff just doesn't feel right to be talking about. And why does it really matter even when we're doing a recruitment process? But getting people comfortable having those conversations, I think that's making the biggest difference. And the more we speak to people, the more people are sharing their own stories, and the more authentic it becomes. And then hopefully in time, it'll just become part of what we do and how we do it. But until we get there, I can't stress enough the importance of just having the open dialogue. And we'll make mistakes. We use wrong terminology, or we make a mistake in something, or who's invited to something or isn't invited to something. We'll make mistakes along the way. That's okay. We'll learn from them, and we'll pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and carry on learning on this journey. But I think transparency, authenticity, and communication.
Amazing. Brilliant. I guess we'll have to probably wrap it up there. I'm sure we could talk all day about this, but I really appreciate your time and for going over. Thank you so much to everyone for their questions. And if you want to learn more, then drop me an email. I can always liaise with this wonderful panel and try and find out some more information. But thank you so much, guys. Have a great rest of the day.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Right.